Hello guys and welcome to my new video, and today we're going to be discussing if Blizzard has broken Mythic Plus, because the Mythic Plus meta right now after patch 10.15 is looking to be extremely rigid. We're going to be talking about the best tanks, best healers, best DPS, and then we're going to talk about the issues, the problems. How has Blizzard changed everything? So like many of you, I've been enjoying the new patch. I've been enjoying the new reworks. I've been playing Holy Paladin, I've been playing Augmentation Evoker. I've been trying out and see where the meta is heading, how people are feeling towards the new classes, especially considering that Augmentation Evoker is the first support spec that they ever made. I thought it's going to be quite scary to see how the community is going to react to it. But the general consensus of the video, no matter how good the reworks are, in my opinion, Holy Paladin is extremely strong and really fun to play, which can sometimes be very hard to achieve. I think Augmentation Evoker provides something new that Blizzard has never seen before, because right now you're looking at 3 or 4 different specs or classes that are looking to be like pure lock-in choices right now. If you're looking to push that Mythic Plus, if you're looking to min-max your group because of the synergies that they can provide. Before this patch, we went from somewhat open Mythic Plus push group. You still had the best classes, you still had the classes that you kind of wanted in your group, but now in 10.15, if nothing changes, you're going to have a single comp with maybe tiny variations if you want to get that rank 1 title. Let's talk about it. So let's go and start with DPS. We're going to be using some of the raid information to showcase how certain classes are overpowered or being represented as overpowered. Again, this is a Mythic Plus video, so keep that in mind. But right now you can see here, this is average information for 10.15. You can almost disregard this data to a certain extent because it has been tainted. For the people who don't know, Augmentation Evoker is the new support class and it deals damage to other players. So if you have a group that deals more damage, or if you can select the right people to get your buffs, you're going to be doing more damage. Unfortunately, because it is the first week of the new patch, there has never been a support class before. A lot of the hooks in Warcraft logs do not work. They are kind of broken, especially for classes that have pets, guardians, or have specific accumulators, and that includes Fire Mage's Ignite. So technically these logs are completely tainted because of Augmentation Evoker, and they don't showcase the true potential of the class. But unless you've been living under a rock and never played with a Fire Mage or Mage in general in your Mythic Plus group, you're probably fully aware of how overpowered mages are if you've done a couple of Mythic Plus keys, especially with Augmentation Evoker Fire Mages. The synergy between them is absolutely insane. There's clips out there where Fire Mages are dealing 1 or 2 million damage during burst window situations. It's absolutely insane to a fact that most groups right now will have a mage in the roster, and because of or how powerful they are right now, with the fact that augmentation is really powerful, you're seeing keys that, again, a group that probably has been doing plus 24 keys now able to do plus 26 keys because of how broken these comps are. But Blizzard has seen this and mages are getting nerfed. They're nerfing them in the next reset. I'm still not sure how they're going to deal after the nerfs. I'm still sure mages are going to be viable and still probably brought into these groups and played around. We'll have to see, but this is something that Blizzard has. They acknowledged it, they said it's too powerful, and they are doing something about it. Probably one of the biggest, craziest changes that happen in patch 10.15 is going to be Augmentation Evoker. I think this class has the potential to change absolutely everything, and this is coming from a person who heals, and I'll talk about my healing experience. I talk about my experience while playing Augmentation, and I'll talk about my experience while playing with Augmentation Evoker in my group, because healing with Augmentation Evoker is a dream come true. It is a different game that I'm playing right now. So Augmentation Evoker is classified as a DPS, so we'll have to cover it in the DPS section. First of all, Augmentation is being used by every single high Mythic Plus pushing group, and again, you're seeing the screen right here. We're gonna go to rated.io, we'll go to the DPS section, and this is 25 and up right now for patch 10.15. Augmentation is one of the most popular specs right now. It's almost considered to be mandatory right now, and you can see Shadow Priest are being really popular. The fact that Augmentation Evoker works really well with Shadow Priest and works really well with something like Fire Mages, these 3 specs have inflated Mythic Plus score by an insane amount, to an extent that, for example, if these specs are going to be nerfed after this reset, this week could potentially have the highest keys done for the rest of the season because of how broken they are. So this is why I mentioned, or this video could be named as Blizzard Broken Mythic Plus. First of all, in lower end content, it is absolutely hilarious because people don't know what support classes do. They look at details meters and they're looking at Augmentation doing 40-50k overall damage, and they're like, Augmentation, this is the worst class I've ever seen. I'm not going to invite Augmentation Evoker in my plus 15 ever again. And then you're doing a plus 27 key and you're like, Augmentation Evoker just carried this key and I'm able to do plus 27 keys, even though before I was only able to do 25. A big disparity between the top 1% and the rest of the people in terms of perceiving how good this class is. In terms of what it provides, there's a huge synergy between Breath of Eons, because this is a 2-minute cooldown, and certain other classes can really benefit from Breath of Eons in terms of providing insane 2-minute burst potential. Breath of Eons, depending on the talents or which talents you pick, can also provide a shield, which can be really powerful in order to survive certain mechanics. You also have buffs like Ebon Might, which is basically a bread and butter as Augmentation Evoker, which provides primary stats. Most people don't even realize that in Mythic Plus environment, you're providing this Ebon Might, which is primary stat increase to your DPS classes, which makes them DPS more. But you're also providing this to your tank. You're also providing this to your healer, which is making their life way easier, on top of the fact that as Augmentation Evoker, your mastery provides versatility buff when you use your empowered abilities, which provides a lot more survivability to your group. Oh, and I almost forgot, if you do spec into Aspect's favor, you're basically going to have Rallying Cry type of cooldown in these 5-mass situations every time you use Obsidian Scales, which is situationally going to be insanely powerful. On top of that, one of your empowered abilities, Upheaval, is going to knock enemies up in the air, which means that you're going to provide a decent amount of disruption, especially on these fortified trash bag pulls. All of this combines to create Augmentation as the ultimate support or ultimate babysitting class that transfers or transforms really annoying Mythic Plus dungeons into a pretty good holiday. So I managed to heal a couple of keys with Augmentation Evoker, and honestly, I just cannot go back. I cannot go back to keys without Augmentation. The fact that Augmentation can change your keys so much to an extent that healing feels like a breeze, it almost makes me think that maybe Blizzard intended Season 2 Mythic Plus healing to feel like this, but they couldn't get the class out in time. The difference is absolutely insane. Keys that I used to hate, even in puck situations, keys that I used to hate, keys that were really annoying for me, with Augmentation Evoker, they're a breeze. It's almost like I'm playing a different game. But you have to remember, Augmentation Evoker basically scales on your group. If you have DPS classes or DPS players that are not really that good or dying to mechanics or cannot avoid mechanics, your damage as Augmentation Evoker is going to be lower as well. In high-end keys, I think Augmentation Evoker is going to be absolutely insane. In lower end, you might be a bit of a bait depending on which players or the class or the skill of players in your group. At the end of the day, I think it is a little bit weird to introduce the support class and make it basically mandatory, in my opinion, because I'm not going back. I don't want to do keys without Augmentation Evoker. Augmentation Evoker gives you almost like this blanket across your Mythic Plus group that provides more survivability, provides damage, it just basically makes everything better. Is it healthy to have a spec like this right now? Because honestly, I feel Augmentation Evoker is going to be a pretty much mandatory pick, which means that there is less spots in that Mythic Plus group. And on a side note, I did try out Augmentation Evoker. I did try it out in a couple of keys, and honestly, it is a very simplistic class, but you do have to track other players' cooldowns. I think there is kind of an issue to really showcase the power or how good is your Augmentation Evoker. You could, to some extent, have a rank 1 title by playing Augmentation Evoker and no one realizing whether you're good or bad, because there are no good tools to really evaluate your performance. You can use Warcraft logs, but a lot of people might not even log their Mythic Plus runs. So you could technically join a really high Mythic Plus group as Augmentation Evoker and kinda get carried because of your class and the fact that it's relatively hard to really determine, are you a good Augmentation Evoker? Are you better than this Augmentation Evoker? If you really wanted that rank 1 Mythic Plus title and you never gotten this in your life, I think Augmentation Evoker might be the easiest way to get that title without stressing too much. So let's go to healers right now, and we're going to be using great information to showcase how strong certain healers are in terms of pure HPS. And of course, it is all about Holy Paladin. Holy Paladin received a very significant rework in terms of how they play, in terms of the talent builds that are available. There's probably 7 or 8 different variations of talent builds that you can use both in raids and Mythic Plus, because people are still realizing what the best talent builds are. But just to showcase the HPS, these logs are not tainted because of Augmentation Evoker, because of how healers work. But the general consensus, Holy Paladin is like 10-15% ahead of everyone else in terms of pure HPS. And this is the first week of Aberrus. This is the first week. This is when people are finding the best spec. They're finding the best talent builds, because there's like 7 or 8 different talent builds for Mythic Plus and Raid that people are using. What's going to happen in week 2, week 3, week 4 when people realize this is the best talent build to run? Holy Paladins are going to rise and rise and rise. Holy Paladin right now is by far the best healer both in raids and Mythic Plus content, because they provide unmatched HPS, they provide a lot of damage, and they provide a lot of utility. If you don't think Holy Paladin is overpowered, you're probably just overdosing on copium, which is fine. Overdosing on copium is fine because you remember Season 1, Preservation of Ochre, you remember Season 1, Resto Druid, they were about 15% ahead of everyone else in terms of pure HPS. Season 1 in Dragonflight required huge amount of healing checks at the very start, and there were only 2 healers that were able to match this, Preservation of Ochre and Restoration Druid. The same kind of thing is happening right now with Holy Paladin. You just need to, again, there is no shame in acknowledging that, because if you don't acknowledge that Holy Paladin is overpowered right now, you're basically dismissing every other healer in the game. So I did manage to do a couple of keys with Holy Paladin, and their HPS feels really strong, but not only that, their gameplay feels so much more fun right now. First of all, you have so much more buttons to press, which to some extent my action bars are really suffering. You have a lot of buttons. It feels like you have a button for every single situation, whether it's going to be Tears Deliverance with Hand of Divinity, whether it's going to be combination of something like Daybreak with something like Divine Toll. There's a lot of ways of dealing with different type of healing requirements as Holy Paladin, on top of the fact that you still provide a lot of damage, you still provide a lot of utility. Again, the gameplay feels a lot more fluid in terms of consistent healing because you do have Tears Deliverance. You are considered to some extent as an uptime spec because you have Boundless Salvation, you have to maintain or try to extend your Tears Deliverance. You have so much more continuous healing because Beacon of Fate is making a comeback. You have more consistent healing, less of these windows with something like Wings. You just have an easier time as Holy Paladin in every single form, and I think that's really interesting. Even if Blizzard does look at Holy Paladin and they're like, Holy Paladin is a bit overpowered, we're going to nerf them across the board in terms of pure HPS output they do. Those type of nerfs, I don't think they're going to change the viability of Holy Paladin because you still have that utility. You still have those buttons for almost every single situation. You still have strong tank healing, strong consistent healing. Holy Power generation is also crazy right now compared to the previous patch, which means you have more options when dealing with different situations. Even if Paladin gets nerfed, I still think Holy Paladin is going to be a very sought after spec. Again, we have to look if Blizzard decides to do anything about this. But right now, if you're looking for the best healer in Mythic Plus, or if you're looking to poke content, again, there is a big disclaimer here. If you're a healer that's looking to poke for rank 1 title and you're not Holy Paladin, you're probably going to be staying in queue for hours and hours and hours because Holy Paladin is so strong right now. Pugs are not going to invite anyone else but Holy Paladin. That's how powerful this spec is after the rework. But don't take my word for it. You can check out Reddit.io information for 25 and up keys for patch 10.15. There is only one healer right now for really high keys, and that is Holy Paladin. If you're playing Holy Paladin, you're having the time of your life because Holy Paladin is back to being the best healer in the game right now. If you're playing anything but Holy Paladin, you're probably having a really tough time because you cannot get invited to those pug, again, Mythic Plus groups. So now let's go to some of the tanks that are really popular, really strong right now in Mythic Plus content. And I don't think there's huge surprises here because I think most people were predicting that Vengeance Demon Hunter and Guardian Druid are going to be the most popular tanks coming into 10.15. I think there was a little bit unexpected to see how far Guardian Druid climbed because a lot of people swapped over to Guardian Druid. The fact that they're so tanky, they can deal so much damage, they do provide a decent utility to your Mythic Plus group. Guardian Druid is doing really well, but Vengeance Demon Hunter is also doing well. But if you look at 25 and up keys, every other tank, again, there is a lot. This is why I say that 10.15 meta has shifted so much. From having multiple tanks being available, multiple specs being usable in some of these high keys, you now have this extremely rigid meta. Look at the best comp, and this is not a big surprise. You have a Guardian Druid, you have a Holy Paladin, you have a, again, Mage, Fire Mage most likely, and then you have your Augmentation of Ochre and a Shadow Priest. That's looking to be like the one and only meta or the main meta to push your Mythic Plus keys. And if you're trying to put content, as something like a DPS Hunter, you're probably going to have a really bad time because you have arguably 3 or 4 spots that are completely ingrained in the meta. So in terms of tanking, again, Guardian Druid, Vengeance Demon Hunter are really strong. If you're playing these classes in your Mythic Plus group, you have to account for the fact that you don't have a Protection Paladin, which means that you need interrupts. And this is why another reason why Holy Paladin is quite strong, because Holy Paladin has that melee short interrupt. You do have to rely on some of these classes for interrupt because you cannot be carried by your Protection Paladin. So the whole general consensus of this video is that we have an extremely rigid Mythic Plus meta right now. For the people who are pushing their keys before 10.15, who are again sitting with a really good IO score, they're probably extremely angry right now because all of your score, or a lot of your score, has been invalidated by the fact that you have Augmentation of Ochre, the fact you have Fire Mages, because they have brought up the score by a significant amount because of how strong the composition are. Again, you're looking at the best comps in the world, and I think Guardian Druid, Holy Paladin, Shadow Priest with Augmentation Evoker and a Mage, specifically Fire Mage in certain situations, is going to be the most rigid Mythic Plus comp that you ever seen. Maybe not ever seen because, again, Destruction Warlocks existed in Shadowlands, but there is not a lot of freedom here. If you're a hunter or DPS hunter who's looking to push Mythic Plus or get rank 1, you're gonna have a hard time because those spots are almost taken up by certain classes. Now, mages are getting nerfed, so we'll have to see if mage is still going to be meta. My assumption is that they're still going to be strong and still going to be pushed because of how well they synergize with Augmentation Evoker. The biggest problem here is probably Augmentation Evoker because of how it changes. And it's not a surprise, I made multiple videos. Augmentation Evoker is going to change everything because most of the DPS classes are going to play around Augmentation Evoker. Augmentation Evoker is only as powerful as OP specs right now. If you have Fire Mages and Shadow Priests who have a lot of, again, Shadow Priests have PI, they have 2-minute cooldowns, things like that. If you have multiple specs right now that can synergize with Augmentation Evoker really well, Augmentation Evoker is going to become better and better and better. If those specs get nerfed, augmentation is going to fall. So right now we're looking at the peak performance in terms of meta because you're getting some of the highest keys in the world that never been completed before because these specs are so strong. What is the right solution here? Did Blizzard break Mythic Plus because the specs right now, the classes or the meta is so rigid, there's not a lot of room. Again, in terms of tanks, you have 2 specs in terms of tanks. In terms of healer, you only have 1 healer because Holy Paladin is so powerful. And in terms of DPS, Shadow Priest and Augmentation Evoker is 100% lock-in because mages got nerfed, and we'll have to see. Maybe there's going to be 1 spot open for that Mythic Plus push group. Imagine 1 spot open if you really wanted to push it. Of course, a big disclaimer right now, if you have an organized group or run with a group of friends, you can make most of the classes work, but you might have to work a lot harder depending on what your group composition is going to be like. But generally, the classes that I listed in this video are performing really well, and if you want to pug, a lot of the times pugs are really ruthless and they're just going to pick whatever is meta, especially in that high-end Mythic Plus. So it really depends what your end goal is in World of Warcraft, whether it's going to be pugging or pushing with your specific group, and if you want to have an easier time. In my opinion, I'm having so much fun with Holy Paladin because the gameplay is so fun. I'm having fun with Augmentation Evoker because it's something new, but I also can see how this type of meta can be toxic to your group or people who are pugging, because if you're anyone but these classes right now that you see on the screen, you're probably having a really bad time. Let me know how you feel about this, and I'll see you in my next video.